All right, at this point, you're probably thinking, I've watched 20 minutes of videos and I haven't seen any code yet. We are going to look at some code in this example that I'm getting ready to do. But before we do, I want to take you out and show you the documentation for the create table statement. So I'm out at Microsoft, and I just typed into Google T-SQL create table, and it gave me a link to this page, which is the documentation for creating a table in Transact SQL. Okay, it says it would take 70 minutes to read the whole thing. I am not going to read the whole thing to you. Let's look at the create table statement. So the create table statement starts with the words create table, followed by a database name, a schema name, and a table name. Or we can just, that's the or the pipe, or we can just specify a schema name and a table name, or just a table name. Okay, and you start looking through here and look at all these, the square brackets means that's an option, that's an option, that's an option, this is another option. And then we come down here to column definitions, and you can look how long all the options are for a single create table. All the different things we can use when we create a table. There is a ton there. You don't sit down and just learn this. You learn things as you need them normally. So let's look up the very top though, because at the very top, it gives us a simple create table syntax. This is common if we're not using a bunch of those options, right? This is a little bit easier to read. And the syntax is we type create table, and then we specify the database name, the schema name, and table name, or the schema name and table name, or just the table name. Okay, so create table, give it a name. Then in parentheses, we do these column definitions. Okay, and this little optional symbol here, comma, ... n, means we can put a comma and keep putting column definitions, as many as we want, inside these parentheses. Okay, and then right here we have the optional semicolon that may not always be optional. So that's our create table statement. Let's do one. I am going to create a table. And remember, we said create table, and we have to give it a name. I'm going to call this table example. And then inside parentheses, I have to give it definitions for my column. Okay, so for this table, and this is where it comes out nice to have that plan I talked about in the other videos. What are my column names going to be? What data types are they going to be? Are they optional or mandatory? We're doing a real simple one here. We're going to do one called person ID. Its data type is going to be an int. Okay, so at the very minimum, the name of the column and its data type. And then I can put a comma, and I can put the name of the next column. We'll do last name. That will be, excuse me, I typed wrong, varchar. We'll say last name can hold up to 50 characters. That allows for some pretty long last names. Okay? And as long as I keep putting a comma, I can keep specifying more columns. The column name followed by its data type. So next will be first name. And that'll be a varchar as well. We'll only give them 25 characters for that. We'll learn later how you can change the length if you need to. And then we'll do that famous column you should never use, but for some reason my example has it in there. We can get away with using a tiny int for this. And then the last thing is we have to close out. We have to have that matching parenthesis for the opening parenthesis. So all our column names with their data types are here, separated by commas. Okay. Could have put that all in one line if I wanted to. Okay. Let's go ahead and execute this. Commands completed successfully. Let's go over here to our databases, and I'm going to go into AdventureWorks, Tables, and see. I'll hit refresh here to make sure I have all the latest one. Dataverse, AdventureWorks, Tables. And I don't see example because I wasn't paying attention, and I made that mistake that I told you would all make at some point. And that was, I was on the master database. I told that database we never really want to mess with. I just created a table in it. If I look in my system databases in my master database, I now have this example table. Oops. I'm just going to right click on it, and I'm going to hit delete and delete it. Okay. So when you start creating your tables, make sure you have selected the right database. I didn't specify a database up here. I could have said AdventureWorks dot, I'm just going to create it in the DBO schema, DBO dot example. I could have done this. Okay. And even if I was on the master, it would work. So let's do that. AdventureWorks. Here's my tables. I'm going to refresh, and I can see DBO example here in my columns: person ID, last name, first name, and age. So if I'm not specifying the database name and the schema, I need to make sure I'm at least have the right database selected up here. Okay. So let me delete that again. I'm going to delete it. Okay. I'm going to go back over here and run this with just the create table with the name example. I don't have a schema on it, so by default, when you don't put the schema name, I'll hit refresh, and there's my example table, and the columns are there. Okay. If I wanted to create this somewhere else, like in the person, I could have done it by saying person.example, and I would have created inside the person schema instead. Can I do that if I already have an example in that schema? It let me. So refresh it. So I have a DBO.example. I don't see it though. And there's my person.example. Okay, same column names. So they're in different schemas, so I can use the same table name. So be careful about that. I didn't really want one in my person schema. I wanted it in the DBO. I'm going to right click in there, and I'm going to delete that table. We'll learn how to do that with commands later. But that's how you create a table. A lot of times we create the table with a very simple syntax like this, and then we go back and modify it and add a lot of the options that we saw in that create table statement. And we'll learn how to modify tables later and add options. I didn't specify any primary keys or foreign keys here. That's coming in another video.